Hey everybody, today we're going to do a simple before and after water change here on my 125, but before we get started I want to discuss what's actually going on with the tank. You probably already noticed it's got some cloudy water in it, and I believe that cloudiness is just a result of the mesh bag full of poultry grit that I put in there about a week ago. Now if you don't know what poultry grit is, it is a combination of crushed coral and oyster shells. And I put, I don't know, maybe a pound of it in the filter, and the idea is I'm going to put a little bit of carbonates, a little bit of buffering capacity in my tank. I'm also going to put a little bit of minerals into the tank. And I think because it's that brand new first batch I put in there, we're getting a little bit of that sort of cloudy water from the dissolving corals. I rinsed the bag off pretty well before I put it in the filter, but as soon as I started the filter up, almost milky looking water was coming out of it, and after about a week we still have this little bit of cloudiness. So I think that's what's going on with the cloudiness. It could have something to do with changes I made to the filter, and I'm getting a little bit of a bacterial bloom. I don't know. I've got no ammonia, no nitrite, so I'm not worried about it. If it is a little bit of a bacterial bloom, that'll clear itself up in time. I think it's the poultry grit that I put in there. So we're going to do a big water change. I'm going to do about a 50% water change. Right now the water coming out of my tap is about 6.4. I do need to address that. It should be around neutral, but that'll be a different video. We got to talk about my water system and why it's not where it should be right now. I need to refill one of my canisters in there. Anyway, the pH in this tank is now at about 7. It's been slowly coming up because of the carbonates that I've been adding to the water, but I believe that the carbonates are in a constant battle with all of the tannin that's being produced. You can see I got this great big piece of wood behind me. That's putting a lot of tannic acid into the tank, and so you've got acid and antacid, and they're sort of at war with each other. Where that balance is going to fall, I don't know. We've slowly crept up to about 7. I think given enough time, it would get a little above 7, 7.2, 7.3, somewhere in that neighborhood. I'm fine with any of this as long as it stays below 8. We'll be doing fine. So today we're going to do the big water change. We're going to see how much I reduced the pH, because again, we're going to be using 6.4 water, and we've got a neutral tank. So even a huge water change should only drop it to about 6.8 or something like that. And we're also going to look at the general and carbonate hardness before and after the water change. Right now, I didn't check the carbonate hardness, but it should be 5 or 6, I'm guessing. We'll find out. The general hardness right now is sitting at 6. So that's considerably harder than my 0 degree hardness water, and I usually have about 2 degrees carbonate hardness in my tap water. So we'll see what's going on in the tank, and then we'll go ahead and do the water change and all. All right, everybody. The battery in my other camera is dead, so we did not get to watch the whole process. Doesn't really matter. I haven't done anything except let the tank drain. I was in the other room tinkering around with stuff, just kind of keeping my eye on what was going on in here. Kind of wish I had realized there was so much splashing going on. I would have done something about that, but it's a little late for that now. Anyway, we're about to reverse the polarity, and we're going to start filling the tank back up. So sit tight, and we'll see what it looks like afterwards. And there's your after. So not a whole lot to talk about. I did test all my water before and after the water change, and I didn't get a lot of unexpected results, which is good. My general hardness stayed pretty much where it was, which I find a little interesting. I did wait about an hour after doing the water change before I actually took a sample and retested it. So the general hardness didn't change. It was still about 6 degrees of general hardness. The carbonate hardness did not change. That remained at 2 degrees carbonate hardness. That was both before the water change and after the water change. The only thing that really changed was the pH. And I started with what I had decided I was going to call 7. The color looked like it was somewhere sort of, I couldn't decide whether it was 6.8 or 7, and ultimately I went with 7. And then when I did my test of the water I was adding, you know, my tap water, I couldn't decide whether that was 7.6 or 7.4. And so ultimately I decided it was 7.4. So I did a little more than a 50% water change, and when I tested the pH afterwards, it came out at about 7.6 or thereabouts. So that would be about right, you know, right somewhere in the middle of 7.4 and 7. I mean 6.4 and 7. And I brought it down to right around 7.6, 7.7, somewhere around in that area. I mean 6.7, I keep saying 7 there. Anyway, you get the idea. The pH did not shift a whole lot, and the amount it did shift makes perfect sense based on the amount of water I put in and the pH of the water I put in, so nothing unexpected or unusual there. We're still getting a little bit of that cloudiness, but again, I believe that is coming from the dissolving minerals, although it could be a little bit of cloudiness from a little bit of disruption in the nitrogen cycle, but I really find that hard to believe. First of all, when I did the filter change, not on this water change, but on my previous water change, it's been about 10 days or maybe 2 weeks, somewhere in that neighborhood. It's been a little while. So if I did disrupt the nitrogen cycle, it's typically only a few days before that gets back in line and any cloudy water you've got tends to clear up. So why it's still cloudy after all this time, I don't know. And when I did the water change, it looks to me like I've reduced the cloudiness by about half. So what's probably really going on is I just didn't remove all of the cloudy water. As I said, when I did that other water change, as soon as I turned the filter back on, just like milky water came out of it, and that was all that dissolved, you know, loose crushed coral and everything in there. It just clouded the water. So this water change probably just didn't remove enough of it, and over the course of the next several water changes, I'm probably going to wind up having less and less cloudiness until the water's nice and clear again. And lastly, I will say, I think I am going to do something with this one last lonely little minnow. It's swimming around like it's just looking for others of its own kind. It looks pretty frantic all the time, and it is in there by itself. So at this point, it's just a matter of time before it either gets eaten or jumps out of the aquarium. It's not going to stay in there for any kind of long term, so there's no point in me really even keeping it in there, basically just waiting for it to die in some fashion. So I am going to get rid of that. I'm not going to publicly go into how I'm going to get rid of it or where I'm going to get rid of it or anything like that, but suffice it to say it will be safe and happy, and hopefully it will live a nice long happy life after it gets out of this tank and goes back to a more natural environment. So there you go, everybody. That's a look at my 125 gallon New World tank. Hope you enjoyed that. Make sure you're subscribed, because you never know what you're going to get with me. I do have about 15 things on my mind that I want to shoot videos about, but I can only do so many videos each day, and of course you all can only watch so many videos each day, so I've got to space them out. If you're subscribed, you won't miss any of that or anything else I got coming up. So thanks again, and I'll see you real soon in the next one.